You have places to be. You have a schedule. You are a functioning adult human being with responsibilities and a reasonable degree of self-discipline. And then someone walks past you with a small dog. Not even a particularly remarkable dog. Just a dog. Regular size. Regular face. Regular fur. And something happens to you that you did not authorize. Your stride slows. Your head turns. Your hand, operating entirely independently of your conscious brain, begins to rise from your side. Before you have made any decision whatsoever, you have stopped walking, crouched down to pavement level, and started making sounds you would never make in a business meeting. Oh, who are you? Look at your little face. Words aimed at an animal that cannot understand a single one of them, and is frankly a little confused about why a stranger is now 4 inches from its nose. You are completely out of control. And the strange part is, you already knew this was going to happen. You saw the dog, and on some level you knew. There was no version of that moment where you just kept walking. The hand was going up. The voice was going soft. The schedule was becoming irrelevant. Why? Not the vague answer. Not because dogs are cute, not because I'm a dog person. The actual why. The biological, neurological, evolutionary, slightly embarrassing why. The one that explains not just why you like animals, but why you cannot stop yourself. Because this is not a preference. This is not a personality trait. This is a compulsion. It is running on hardware that is millions of years old. And it is far stranger than you have ever been told. Let's get into it. Here is the first thing nobody tells you, and it's the most important place to start. The urge to touch a cute animal is not a decision. By the time you become consciously aware that you want to pet the dog, you have already started petting the dog. The behavior has initiated. The hand is already moving. What feels like a desire, a want, a conscious impulse, is actually your conscious mind catching up to something your motor system began doing half a second earlier. This isn't a metaphor. It's been measured. Research on approach motivation, the term for what happens when the brain flags something as rewarding and starts generating movement toward it, shows again and again that the motor initiation of approach behavior precedes conscious awareness of wanting it. The brain identifies the stimulus, tags it as rewarding, and starts moving you. Only afterward does your conscious mind get the memo. You were never in charge here. The fast, automatic, reward-seeking part of your brain got there first. The part of you that feels like a rational adult with dignity arrived to find the hand already halfway up. First, your visual system clocks the features: large eyes, a round face, soft curves, short limbs, a big head. These are the exact features ethologist Konrad Lorenz identified in 1943 and named Kinderschema, baby schema. His insight was that these features trigger an automatic caregiving response in adult humans, evolved to bond us to infants, and that response fires whether the infant-shaped thing in front of you is an actual baby or a golden retriever. Your visual cortex passes this signal straight to the amygdala, which flags emotional significance, and the orbitofrontal cortex, which flags reward value. Both light up at once. Not interesting. Important. Worth moving toward right now. And then the dopamine starts. Dopamine isn't a pleasure chemical, despite what you've probably heard. It's an anticipation chemical, released not when you get a reward, but when your brain predicts one is coming. Cute animals are extraordinary dopamine triggers because they promise rewards across several systems at once: soft texture, warm contact, gentle movement, a small positive exchange, all promised before you've touched anything. You did not choose to want to pet the dog. Your brain chose for you, told your motor system to move, and only afterward informed your conscious mind, as a courtesy. You are the last to know. Here's where it gets deeper, because the compulsive quality of this urge, the fact that it overrides your schedule and moves your body before you've decided anything, is not a glitch. It is the system working exactly as designed. Every mammal is born almost entirely dependent on a caregiver. Unlike species that can walk or swim within hours of birth, mammalian infants need prolonged physical care, feeding, warmth, protection, contact. Without it, they don't survive. That's biology, not sentiment. So evolution had a problem to solve. How do you guarantee that adults will reliably, almost helplessly, want to approach and care for something small and defenseless? You build it into the hardware. You make approaching small, soft things feel so rewarding that the impulse is genuinely hard to ignore. You attach a neurochemical payoff to contact so strong that the behavior reinforces itself every single time. You make it a compulsion. And you make the trigger broad, round face, big eyes, soft texture, clumsy movement, because infants don't all look alike, and a narrow trigger would fail too often. That wide margin is the entire reason you are now 30 seconds late to work because you stopped for a stranger's dachshund. You are not failing to manage a preference. You are being operated by a system responsible for the survival of every mammal that has ever lived, a system built, on purpose, to be difficult to override. The fact that it fires on animals as readily as on babies isn't a malfunction. It's the unavoidable cost of building a trigger reliable enough to actually work. You were never going to win this one. But it doesn't stop with the eyes. Because here's something almost nobody explains, and it might be the single most remarkable part of this whole story. The urge to touch isn't just downstream of seeing something cute. Touch is its own separate system, its own pathways, its own evolutionary logic, its own reasons for caring specifically about soft, warm fur. Your skin contains several distinct receptor types: pressure, vibration, temperature, pain, texture. One type almost nobody's heard of is directly relevant here. See tactile afferents, slow nerve fibers across the hairy skin covering most of your body, tuned almost perfectly to one kind of touch, slow, gentle stroking, around 1 to 10 centimeters per second, skin temperature, light steady pressure. Not a poke. Not a pat. This, specifically. Critically, their signal doesn't go primarily to the part of the brain that maps where you've been touched, it goes to regions handling emotion and social bonding, like the insula. These fibers are the physical basis of social touch, evolved to make gentle contact from another living creature feel emotionally significant, not just physically registered. Running your hand through warm fur hits them almost perfectly, your skin telling your brain, in the most direct terms it has, that you're engaged in meaningful contact with a living being. Oxytocin rises. Cortisol drops. Heart rate eases. Your nervous system reads the warmth and quietly stands down its threat response. This is safe. This is alive. You are not alone. The animal is having its own version of this. Studies measuring oxytocin in both humans and dogs during interaction find it spiking in both at once. You walked up to a stranger's dog, and you both, independently, fell a little bit in love. What makes that remarkable is this: that bonding response is the direct descendant of the mechanism that lets mammalian parents bond deeply enough to protect their young at real cost to themselves. It isn't a pale copy of real bonding. It's real bonding, harmlessly misfired onto a different species. You're not overreacting to the dog. You're using the full equipment. Let's get specific about the compulsive part, because this might be the least understood piece of the whole story, and it's the one that actually answers the question in the title. Why can't you stop? You know you should ask before approaching. You've noticed the cat clearly does not want to be touched right now. You're aware this is a work meeting and that hamster belongs to your colleague's kid. And yet, two overlapping mechanisms explain this, and most explanations skip both. The first is the difference between wanting and liking. They sound like synonyms, but they're handled by different systems that can become decoupled. Wanting runs primarily on dopamine, anticipation, approach, fires before contact. Liking runs more on the brain's opioid systems, the actual pleasure once the experience begins. The impulse moving your hand toward the animal is that dopaminergic anticipation system, pulling you forward. Once contact starts, the opioid system takes over the pleasure itself. But here's the catch: the wanting system doesn't switch off once liking begins. It keeps running in parallel. So while you're enjoying the contact, the anticipatory system is still firing, and it's a forward-looking system. It's never satisfied by the present moment. It's always pointing slightly past it, toward the next bit of contact. That's why petting the dog once never fully resolves the urge. The mechanism that got you started is a forward-running anticipation engine, and it doesn't stop just because the reward has arrived. So one pat becomes 5. The second mechanism is something Yale researchers named cute aggression, a term that sounds alarming and turns out to be almost the opposite. Cute aggression is that strange spike alongside the warmth of seeing something overwhelmingly cute, the urge to squeeze, to say I could eat you, to aggressively scrunch a puppy's face despite zero intention of harming it. The Yale team found this isn't random. It looks like a regulatory mechanism. When the brain takes in more positive emotion than it can comfortably process, it generates a small countervailing impulse to pull itself back toward balance, a pressure valve. So the urge to squeeze the puppy is your brain managing being overwhelmed by positive feeling. Which means the strength of the urge you feel toward a cute animal is a direct measurement of how intensely it's affecting you. The stronger the urge, the more overwhelming the cuteness actually is, neurologically speaking. You're not failing to control yourself. You're watching your brain manage something genuinely, measurably, more than it can comfortably hold. Here's the piece that reframes the whole thing, and honestly, it's the part one find most extraordinary. This isn't a human invention. It isn't cultural. It didn't emerge from how we raise children or how common pet ownership happens to be in modern life. It's ancient. Older than our species. Older than our genus. Researchers studying non-human primates have documented cross-species contact with no obvious survival benefit. Capuchin monkeys carefully handling small animals they could easily harm, and don't. Bonobos gently investigating other species sharing their environment. Great apes in captivity forming genuine affectionate bonds with dogs, cats, rabbits, not because they were trained to, but because contact with these animals seems to produce something they seek out again. Coco, the gorilla famously taught American Sign Language, asked for a cat about a year into her research program. She was given one. She named it herself, All Ball. She handled it with consistent, deliberate gentleness. When All Ball was killed by a car, Coco produced signs researchers interpreted as grief. Later, she asked for another cat, and was given 2. A gorilla, mourning a small domestic cat, because physical contact with it had produced something real in her, something she sought out again after losing it. This drive, for contact with small, soft, warm, living things, runs through us, through other primates, through wide swaths of the mammalian world, not because of how any of us were raised. It runs because touch is one of the most fundamental ways mammals signal safety to one another. It's how we regulate each other's nervous systems. Before language, before any of the more sophisticated tools our species developed, there was touch, and touch said something nothing else could: alive, warm, here, safe. You don't respond to dogs and cats and rabbits because you grew up around them. You respond to anything carrying the sensory signature of something small, warm, alive, soft, and harmless, because that signature meant something for millions of years, long before dogs and cats and rabbits existed in their current form. It meant, you are not alone. And this is the part that turns all of this from a fascinating quirk into something genuinely consequential. Touch deprivation is a documented, measurable, physiological stressor. Not just a vague feeling of loneliness, a measurable shift in stress hormones, immune function, cardiovascular markers, and neurological well-being when a body is consistently denied the kind of contact it's built to expect. Infants who receive adequate food and care but insufficient physical touch fail to thrive well beyond emotional bonding. They grow more slowly, they're more vulnerable to illness, development is impaired across multiple domains. The body uses touch as a biological signal about whether the environment is safe, not just as comfort. That holds across the lifespan. Adults chronically deprived of contact show elevated cortisol, weaker immune response, higher anxiety and depression, even slower wound healing. Which brings the animals back into the picture. Pet owners consistently show better health outcomes across a range of markers, and researchers have worked hard to figure out whether that's about companionship in some abstract sense, or about the physical contact specifically. The evidence increasingly points to the contact itself. People who physically interact with animals, petting them, feeling them settle into a lap, feeling the warmth of a small creature against them, show measurable drops in cortisol and rises in oxytocin within 10 to 15 minutes of contact. Your body doesn't need long to respond, because this isn't a learned response. It's a recognition, something your nervous system has been primed for far longer than you've existed as a species. Hospital patients who receive animal-assisted therapy report lower pain and lower pre-procedure anxiety. Schoolchildren with access to therapy animals show measurably lower stress responses under pressure. The pattern holds across populations, contexts, and species of therapy animal. Most of us aren't built for the level of physical separation from other living things that modern life involves. In evolutionary terms, that separation is extremely recent, and none of our wiring has caught up. The reward system, the touch system, all of it is still expecting close, regular contact with other warm bodies. You were not built to go a full workday without touching something soft and alive. The urge you feel when you see that dog on the street is your body noticing the deficit, and recognizing a chance to correct it. So let's bring it together. When you see a cute animal and feel the urge to touch it arrive before you've consciously decided anything, that's your dopaminergic approach system identifying a high-value reward and moving your body before your conscious mind has even been consulted. That isn't impulsiveness. That's fast, efficient, ancient decision-making correctly identifying something important. When your hand makes contact, and something in your chest loosens that you didn't know was tense, that's C-tactile afferents firing, oxytocin releasing, cortisol dropping, your nervous system recognizing the signature of a living body and standing down its own alarm. When you can't stop, when one pat becomes 5, and 5 becomes you sitting on a stranger's front steps for 12 minutes while your coffee goes cold, that's the forward-running anticipation system doing exactly what anticipation systems do, never fully resolving, always pointing one step ahead. And when you hear yourself say "who's the best boy" in a voice you did not choose and cannot fully explain, that's a system older than language finding its own way to say it. Something warm and alive and harmless is here. Signal that it's welcome. Signal, by every channel available, including the ones that bypass your professional dignity entirely, that this moment is good. You cannot stop yourself from touching cute animals for roughly the same reason you cannot stop yourself from breathing after holding your breath too long. The need is that fundamental. The system is that old. You are not overreacting to a dog on the street. You are running close to 2 million years of mammalian wiring, built specifically to make you reach towards small, warm, soft, living things, and you are running it exactly right. The only part that's actually yours is the 30-second apology to the owner afterward, for being, as you put it, a little much. Everything else? That was always going to happen.